the one question that I have is more first a thought, and that is looking at our planet. For thousands of years, the planet has provided us with an unlimited supply of resources for us to evolve, develop, and grow. So listening from your perspective now, I consider the planet like a parent. When we're infants, our parents are always there for us. We trip and fall, they pick us up, and we keep going. But now, you're asking us to change our experiences, and for us, I'm going to view our planet as kind of like an elder. Now we're being asked to pull up our socks and provide to the planet because it's stumbling, having trouble, and right now, based on the viewpoint that science is a political and moral issue, I personally don't know how to take the science that's being provided on your part and put it into action. Is this an area that could come about through our discussion? What do we do? What programs can be brought into place? I know there's been Copenhagen, there's been Kyoto. They've all been attempted. People are trying to do something. What can we do to put science into effect? Thank you.
Could I start with a little story, and then we'll go from there. At the most basic level, in terms of thinking that we need to change the way we view the planet, just thinking that systems other than my own immediate needs are somehow relevant to my well-being, that I'm connected to them, is something that you can acquire by very basic hands-on experiences, for example, with nature. So I'll give you an example of this. Schoolyards in Canada, North America in general, were based on a very old, antiquated idea that kids have huge amounts of surplus energy and they need to burn them off at all costs. It's the surplus energy theory. So they need lots of group space to run around and burn off this energy so they can learn more. But what we now recognize is that there's enormous restorative effects to kids having contact with nature. Aside from basic behavioral management and mood, helping them with mood, helping them with concentration, a child that has early experience with accessible day-to-day nature experiences acquires a sense that this is relevant to who they are, which means that they are then more able to make those connections to increasingly wider and more abstract things. But if you make it very concrete very early, it becomes part of who your sense of self is. When people don't have nature experiences, like literally seeing the little creatures that live in a ditch beside your house and the seasons and how they change, I mean, that's not exotic. When your access to nature becomes more remote and more exotic, like the National Geographic phenomenon, bless its heart, I love National Geo, but if that's all you have, then nature is something out there. It's not of me, it's not relevant to my day-to-day life. And so it isn't built into that self-schema. And you know, one of the initiatives right now that is depicted as very virtuous is our federal government's dedication to a national parks mentality. Now, obviously, preservation of nature lands is important, but if what that means is it comes at the price of conservation efforts in our communities, then that connectedness is lost. And that connectedness can shape a whole pile of things downstream for those children, including their sense of themselves as a connected versus consuming being. I mean, that's just at a very low level, but you can sort of think what the consequences are if you think that's relevant to you early. Just a little thing.
I'd like to just pick up for half a minute on what Laura said about terms of focusing especially on how we ourselves experience the environment as individuals and as communities. And I think it's worth underlining how we do often view climate as the ultimate planetary issue because it implicates the entire globe. But it is also very much climate change is very much the ultimate local issue, that it has to do with the local actions of 7 billion people and the community and the local actions that happen in several million communities around the world. There's a vast range of initiatives that can be taken at the local level to do something about climate change, but it helps to define it, first of all, as something that has political and economic and moral dimensions at the local level. So, like, for example, on Saturday in the Peterborough Examiner on the front page, there was a story about how plans for expanding the Parkway through the city is back on the drawing board, which has the potential to further embed a very car-dependent transportation mentality in Peterborough. To embed even further increased fossil fuel usage at the local level. And so it's that kind of level of local politics where the climate change issue is actually going to be won and lost. So it's kind of analogous to thinking about how if we define climate as simply a scientific issue, that is an obstacle. If we define it as a planetary issue, then that can also be an obstacle as well. We have to look at how climate change resounds in everything that we do at the local level.
If I could just jump in here from the science end of things. And I've always had the question, why don't we see large-scale adaptation of technologies that are better for us? They're better for our climate, they have a smaller environmental footprint, etc. And I agree with everything that's said here, but I think that there are a myriad of solutions. One of the reasons that good science doesn't always make it into adaptation is because scientists tend to work only with other scientists. I think this is a huge, huge issue on how we get scientific solutions into the marketplace, is ensuring that we talk across silos. For example, like the people that are here, asking I'll give you an example. A well-known coffee company that sells coffee in Canada was approached by my group when we were at the U of A, because we developed a coffee cup built entirely out of vegetable oil, and was biodegradable and had a very superior energy footprint, and put no phthalate esters into the environment, but it was going to be 2 cents more for coffee. Well, the company chose not to take the technology up for 2 cents more because they felt that their consumers would not buy coffee and they would go to the competition. Now, had I been much cleverer, I would have employed Laura or her perspectives. I would have found ways of engaging people like Stephen in ways of engaging stakeholders among the coffee drinking public, because solutions are not made in the lab. Solutions has to be, the story of Spam is a good one, right? People didn't use Spam until we told them how to use it in food. People like recipes. And so solutions can't be made in the lab only. They can only be made through collaborations like these also. So I agree with the local interventions, etc. But when you want to get technologies into things, you got to come at it from a much broader perspective and engage people.
In response to the question, what can we do about it? I would like to throw it back to the audience and ask the question, how many of you really know in depth what's going on with the planetary climate system? I dare to say, without trying to offend anybody, and I include myself in the group in the ignorance group, that there is a lot that we don't know. Even sometimes the basics are not well known. People hear about climate change, people hear about global warming, and it's something esoteric. So there is a disconnect. Psychologically speaking, I hope that I'm not doing something to undermine what you said, but when I hear it, people disconnect immediately. There's the denial of what these things are going on. Instead of bringing the appetite for in-depth information as to what the actual problem is, and then see how we can accommodate that into my life in order to have a response, appropriate response in the measure in which I can within my current circumstances. The obvious option is that this is something that I prefer to leave it aside for the time being. It's for the experts. And it's no longer, this thing is no longer for the experts. It should be for general consumption. We should be all well informed, not at the level of the CBC or the level of what is over-digested, but go on to the facts and get informed. And when you start seeing the connections of that with your private life and your circumstances, the answers will come. And I think this is, I painted a picture of very negative, but it's a question of opportunity. There is opportunity here. Our species can survive this if we begin acting and putting our brains towards solutions. And I think the biomaterials and this type of events are wonderful opportunities for diffusion of the need for action.